We say it often that Vladimir Putin is under growing pressure. Ukrainian strikes have either left him ducking for cover or humiliated in his home city. But recent months have been good for Ukraine, and so we are quick to assume that that's bad for Putin. But is it? Today there was more news that would have been unimaginable just 4 years ago. The Russia Day concert cancelled for the first time in 23 years, and an award ceremony on that national holiday moved indoors. And it's not the only marquee event that's been scratched this year either. It came a month after Moscow's Victory Day celebrations were reduced to a march of military personnel. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky giving Putin his permission to go ahead with the march. Clearly, there is some effect, even to the point that Vladimir Putin is now acknowledging Ukrainian drones are doing damage to Russia and its economy.
There's certainly damage being done to our economy, but everything is recovering quickly. There are no problems here. They won't be able to cause us any serious problems.
So is this Putin publicly admitting that the war is not going the way he was hoping? What we know at this stage is that Ukraine has upped its game in terms of drone warfare significantly, and not just on the battlefield along the front lines. Ukraine's attacks have triggered the worst fuel crisis in Crimea since the Ukrainian peninsula was illegally annexed by Russia in 2014. Motorists have been forced to wait in long lines at gas stations amid shortages and outright absences of oil and petrol. Ukraine has also been carrying out drone attacks on oil facilities deep inside Russia, hitting refineries, oil depots and pipelines. Well, for more on this, I can turn to Leon Aron. He's a writer and an expert on Russian domestic and foreign politics. His most recent book is Riding the Tiger, Vladimir Putin's Russia and the Uses of War. Leon, great to have you with us. I want to start by asking you, what has changed, do you think, for Putin in 4 years?
Oh, quite a bit. He is no longer as popular, even though the public opinion polls in a state like Russia today are questionable, but there's no doubt that his popularity is sliding rather than growing. His economy, after growing rather well, due largely to immense investments in the defense sector, is now teetering on the recession, probably on the verge of the recession, probably already in the recession. The inflation is hitting Putin's core support, which is lower middle class and poor people, who are the majority of Russia today. And of course, the war is not going well at all. So he is in a rather tough situation. But all of these are objective factors. The real question is how Putin assesses his situation. And here we get into rather interesting statements from him.
Yeah, that's right. So my next question was going to be, when every headline screams Putin is under pressure, and you've sort of laid out the case why he is it really so? How do we know that he's under pressure?
Well, he is under pressure, and he, in meeting the other day with the much decorated servicemen right from the front lines, it was a big propagandistic show in the Kremlin, he acknowledged that the drones are a problem. In fact, he called the Ukrainian drones the most important problem today. That the economy is somewhat damaged, but nothing to worry about, and we're recovering rather well, he said. And that most importantly, we're winning slowly but surely. The West, who has, by the way, started this war, according to Putin, should not count on Russia being exhausted or the people abandoning the leadership. So between these objective factors and how Putin treats them, I think there's quite a gulf.
Your latest book, Leon, Riding the Tiger, Vladimir Putin's Russia and the Uses of War, chronicles how Vladimir Putin has used militarised patriotism, as you put it, I think, to transform Russian society and maintain his grip on power. Does he still have that iron-handed grip on power at this point?
Well, Putin substituted what had made him very popular in the first two terms, from 2000 to 2008, which was economic progress and the growth in the standard of living. In 2012, when he came back to power, to his third presidency, it was obvious that that's no longer until there are some structural democratizing reforms. Putin obviously did not go for those reforms, and instead he substituted economic progress and the growth in the standard of living with what I call militarized patriotism, which means the motherland is besieged by the West. We're all patriots, and we all have to defend the motherland. And that had to have gone. I mean, you cannot stay on this propagandistic message forever. You have to show something for it. And he did. First, he took Crimea, which was a dress rehearsal for the invasion of Ukraine in 2022. He settled that tiger, and he could not get off it.
Which is more important to Putin, Leon? Is it really policy? I mean, you were starting to make a pathway into that. Or is it the appearance of being in control at this point?
Well, I think those things are merged. He believes he needs to be in control of Russia, that it is his historical mission. And by the way, he ended this conversation with the servicemen by saying, God is with us. He suddenly became, well, that actually started a few years back, a religious man. And so he feels that he is there to guide Russia on its world historic mission of opposing the West and actually transforming the relationship between countries of the world against the so-called monopoly by the United States and its allies, and towards the so-called multipolar world. So he is on a mission. And men and women on the mission are very hard to stop.
As someone who watches this space really closely, and you talk about the instance of talking to the soldiers, do you see signs of stress on Putin? Does he look, does he behave, and is he starting at all to project differently?
Well, there are all sorts of legends and rumors about his rather exotic ways of keeping up with both his appearance and his health. Some of them are rather, as I said, are rather exotic. He looks good. He continues to exercise, and he's an exercise nut. He doesn't drink. He watches his diet. Beyond that, I don't think anybody knows for sure what's happening inside of him. He definitely seems to have the energy, at least on the public level, to project an image of an energetic and competent leader. That is what we're seeing on the show today.
We talk for really good reason about Putin being a strong man, but I wonder, do we, in your opinion, perhaps underestimate his intelligence and his political capabilities? Well,
I'm not sure about, I mean, I don't think he is a grandmaster of politics. He is wily, he is cunning, he has enough of the Machiavellian sort of skill to navigate. And look how he subjugated the post-Soviet elite. He's been rather successful, largely, of course, and that's hardly original to him, relying on FSB, which is the secret police. Yeah. He does have a great deal of energy, and as we found out, a rather capacious memory. He really is pretty good with numbers. He remembers people, and as Stalin used to say, a good memory is the key to every other success of a politician. So, in that sense, I think Putin is certainly capable of ruling Russia, so long as he has enough soldiers and enough secret policemen, and so long as he is willing to kill to stay in power.
Yeah, because I was asking, I guess, as a lead into another question about his political ability, because a lot of people outside of Russia assume a loss in Ukraine or a stalemate or anything less than another glorious Russian victory to sit alongside World War II would lead to his removal from power or something worse. But is it possible for him, I guess I'm asking, to survive something less than victory?
Well, first of all, victory will be what Putin says it is.
Right.
And he will define it. and between the universal dominance of the state-dominated, or in many cases state-owned television, and now the internet, on the one hand, and the threat of going to, or the danger of going to jail for voicing something different, or putting a sticker somewhere in the grocery store opposing the war, and then being sent to prison for 7 years. Between those two, between the repression and propaganda, I believe he could define victory however he wants. Now, that doesn't mean that if he is settled for something less than the minimal aim. Remember, the war started to remove the neo-Nazi regime in Kiev. In the meeting with the servicemen, the goal is now just to get Donbas back, which is the Ukrainian province in the Ukrainian southeast. So that's a scale down already. And so that is how he will define a victory, unless he'll invent something else. And the question is, to what extent the elite and the Russian people will see through the propaganda or dare to defy Putin on that. Both of those things are, at this moment, seem rather remote.
Just on that, as far as damage, you raised the spectre of damage on Russia. There have been reports about the damage that Ukrainian drones have inflicted on Russia again, and it's becoming common. Here's what Vladimir Putin had to say about that today.
Что касается БПЛА самолетного типа, мы видим, что
We see that the enemy is expanding the use of unmanned aerial vehicles to achieve a single objective.
задача это внести раскол в российское общество, нанести там нам морально.
The objective of this military technology is to create division within Russian society, to inflict moral damage on us, to seed confusion among Russian citizens, and to cause economic harm.
Нанести экономический ущерб. Ничего не получится.
Leon, is he right, both about Ukraine's intentions and the effect that those ongoing attacks might be having on Russians?
Well, that's what he believes. He indeed, the last phrase, he said, nothing will come out of it. Ничего не получится. That's from the conversation with the serviceman. That's how he perceives it. But that's kind of the Achilles heel of the whole operation. Because Putin's strategy from the very beginning was to protect at least most of Russians from the consequences of the war. And then when you asked me about what happened in 4 years, I should have added, well, that did change. I mean, it's not just the recession, it's not just the lack of labor resources and regular resources in the civilian sector. It is also that they're beginning to feel the grip, they're beginning to feel the squeeze of the war. And apart from in addition to the inflation and the economic pressures, there is also now a danger of being hit by a drone. They now fly about 1,500 kilometers away from Ukraine. And as we know, even this recent holiday, both the Victory Day and the current, the one a few days ago, the Day of Russia, had to be dramatically, rather humiliatingly, I should say, scaled down for the fear of the drones. That is something that you cannot talk people out of. This is not something that propaganda can cover up. So this is something that, even though Putin says, oh, we're morally strong, the people support the war, the people support the regime, people are beginning to feel that for all the sacrifices they've made, the war not only is not going well, but they are now feeling vulnerable. That was not the deal.
So the people are feeling vulnerable, Leon, but what about the elite? Is it right to assume that they are the only ones who can change the course of Vladimir Putin's political career? If they are in charge, is there any sign that they are starting to feel, perhaps like the people, that things are not going their way and this is not what they were promised?
Well, I'm sure Sorry, I'm sure that that's how they feel. The question is what they can do. What can they do about it? And not much. If there's one thing that Putin worked from the day one when he was elected president first in March of 2000, is to depoliticize the elite. The deal was, and I'm not going to go through some of the oligarchs who ended up in jail or forcibly exiled. The point is, they all learned a lesson. Stay out of politics. I will allow you, if I feel like it, to make your millions and to stick to your business. But there is always that albatross on your neck, and that albatross is the FSB, the secret police. We watch you. And so I'm sure they understand what's going on. And if you remember, when the war started, quite a few of them left Russia. And then, in part, by the way, because of the silly policies of some of European governments in the European Union, they did not really feel very welcome. And many of them came back, including some of the top oligarchs. And certainly physically or in any personal way, I don't think they're affected. I mean, I don't think their lives changed much. Some of them are sanctioned, so they can go shopping in London or New York or Paris or Milan, but that's fine. I mean, they can live with that so long as they have their businesses and continue to make money. So in that sense, they feel that the risk of speaking out against the war by far outweighs their inconveniences, and I believe that they're at peace with it.
So I asked you earlier, can he survive, or can he survive a loss? But I guess the question is now, with all of that in mind that you've just said, can he repackage, can he resell what is going to happen in Ukraine, what's likely to happen as a victory? Is he capable of doing that and surviving?
I think yes. I think he is. If you look at the experience of the dictatorships all over the world, in fact, much as we would like to believe that as President Obama said, everything is the arc of history is bent towards justice. Very few authoritarians lose their power. I mean, they die in office. What happens afterwards, of course, is a different story. So long as you're willing to kill, to stay in power, and you have enough guns and you have enough secret policemen and soldiers that use those guns, you pretty much stay in power. The successful revolutions always start with some sort of moral hesitance at the top, when the rulers begin to slightly doubt their ability, or maybe their moral right, to rule as they did before, and maybe with try to less violence. I don't think that's going to happen to Putin. And I think he could repackage whatever comes along as victory, and stay in power. On the other hand, there are all sorts of situations where confluence of things could come along. There could be a very embarrassing defeat in Ukraine. There could be Russia could sink into, for example, depression rather than just recession. There could be a drone could, I don't know, hit the Kremlin. All sorts of things could come together and overcome that rule of staying in power by violence that I just outlined. But those kind of coincidences are rather rare in history.
Leon, it's been absolutely fascinating to get your thoughts on the current state of the war and the state of politics and the state of Vladimir Putin's Russia as it stands. A writer and expert on Russian and domestic foreign politics, and the writer of his most recent book, Riding the Tiger, Vladimir Putin's Russia and the Uses of War. Leon, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
So then, that's the expert opinion, but what do you think? Is Russia slowly losing its grip on what Putin continues to call a special military operation? And could this be the plot twist that the West has been waiting for? Let us know in the comments. Until next time.